Check out what the satisfied Dan Gemus real estate team clients are saying about working with the Dan Gemus team. Visit dangemus.com.
I got to thank you for being a voice of reason in a sea of insanity.
Now back to the Dan Gemus Real Estate Show on AM 800.
Okay, welcome back to the show, everyone. It's time for our property management topic and segment with Patrice Surette from Goldmar Property Management. Hello, Patrice. I was going to say good morning, but it's afternoon. Hey, Patrice.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good.
So listen, it's the weather is getting warmer, obviously, which we love. I'm thinking it's time for some upkeep on the exterior of properties. What do you say?
Yes, that sounds good.
Is that what you're experiencing right now?
Yes.
What are some tips for some landlords out there?
Yeah, we're just starting to get into different quoting for grass cutting, if applicable.
Yeah.
Usually for rentals, if it's a single family home, the tenant signs a lawn addendum, we call it, where they're signing responsibility to take care of the grass and the snow. A little more complicated when you get into multi-families, because which tenant do you pick to do it, right? And are they reliable to do it? Because the other part of that is a tenant can agree to it all they want, but the ultimate responsibility falls with the owner.
Yeah.
So if that tenant goes away for 2 weeks in the summer, which most, might do, get some vacation, they're not necessarily thinking, I have to get someone to cut the grass because that's my responsibility. They simply won't do it. And then what happens is bylaw comes around and says your grass is 2 feet tall. And unfortunately, the next step, they issue you a warning. And if you don't do it, they fine you. And that's without them even cutting it. They just send you a fine. And then if they have to cut it, that's another fee. So at the end of the day, it's sometimes more prudent just to pay for grass cutting, know it's done, avoid the fines.
I guess I was going to ask, Patrice, in most cases, do you find the tenants in those situations are properly taking care of a yard, or do you find they're being a little nonchalant about it, maybe letting it go a bit more than they would if they were owner of the property?
I think that, it depends if someone's moving out for the first time. The other question, do they have lawn equipment?
Sure.
Right? And if they have lawn equipment, where are you putting it? Do you have a shed? Do you have somewhere they can keep it? Right? So that's one thing, is the equipment. But the other part of it is, if they've never cut grass before, they may think they're doing a great job, but they're not doing the weed whacking. So you've got weeds up your fence, or, they don't know they have to do the city part, the boulevard beyond the sidewalk. That's the responsibility of whichever house is in front of that, right? So they don't necessarily know what's required. If they've been a homeowner or have rented before a home, they're generally more aware. But again, everyone has a different idea of what's acceptable, right? So, including the city.
What do you find most landlords doing? Let's assume it's a fourplex, for example.
Yeah.
What do you find most landlords offering one of the tenants to take care of that? $100 a month, $50 a month off their rent? What are they doing typically?
Most times we just make it a condition of if it's a single family, we just make it part of their rent. Like they don't get a discount necessarily.
But in a fourplex, for example, or in a duplex, is that still the same situation? Just you kind of assign one tenant to the duty?
We would try and find a tenant. Like if we feel like there's a tenant that's more apt to be able to do it, that's home all the time, that's willing and physically able to, we might approach them to do it. And then I would usually approach the owner with what it would cost to contract it out to someone else. And then maybe offer a little bit less than that, because they're going to pay it one way or the other, right? Sure. So, but again, then comes the question of the equipment and where do we keep it? So now all of a sudden an owner's looking at the cost of a lawnmower and how do they get the gas for it? Or is it electric? And then a weed whacker, same thing, right? And then where do you keep it? Because if it's not in a shed that's locked, where's it going? Do
you find some landlords providing the equipment to the tenant, assuming they have a shed or somewhere to put it? Do you find some landlords providing it?
We usually have to, because most people that rent wouldn't necessarily have a lawnmower that they're bringing. It's like having their own appliances. It's very unusual. So most of the time we do have that situation where we're then saying, okay, well, they'll do it, but we have to provide this. So the investment in the equipment is sometimes more than it will cost you in the season to cut it, right? Plus, if you have to build a shed, and there's the risk of loss, and you have to maintain it. So now you've provided it. Well, what if it breaks halfway through the season, right? Or so, and a lot of tenants don't have the, if they get a gas lawnmower, they don't have the ability to go and get the gas to fill it. So now who's doing that, right? So it's often just more practical just to have it contracted out. You know, it's done well, you know, it's done consistently every week. You're not going to have a surprise city fine on your taxes. And a lot of times those contractors also, they're looking for litter, like they're going to pick up your garbage. They're going to report back and let us know there's a couch on your front yard that needs to be removed, right? So things like that also avoid the city fines. Your hedges need to be trimmed. Branches have fallen. So a lot of times the tenant, even though they're doing it, you know, to be, you know, helpful, will cut the grass, but they're going to cut right around that big branch. And they're not going to necessarily think to call us to tell us it needs to be removed. Some would, but...
So talk to us about what you would deal with, assuming bylaw came by, and they would normally leave something on the door, would they not?
Yes, they would leave a notice on the doors.
Yeah.
Yep. But again, if a tenant sees that, they don't necessarily think it's for them.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily tell us. And those notices, give you 7 days to rectify the problem, sometimes less. But if we don't get told it's there, how would we rectify it? So next thing you know, that 7 days has passed and the city's coming back, and then you get that fine. Yeah. So, you know, we're putting a lot of onus on the tenants to tell us, hey, we have a notice on our door. And it may be their way also. We don't know. So it just avoids that. And the city's pretty, you know, they're pretty diligent. They're patrolling the alleyways, you know, looking for these kind of things to make sure the city streets are maintained.
I was going to say, right? As they should, because you don't want the city looking like garbage either, right? So you want it looking proper and nice for the neighbors. So I would assume that in most cases, it's neighbors that are calling to complain about the yard next door, you know, not being kept properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, all the time. Yeah. And fences, like our big thing right now, we have a lot of fences that are leaning. We've had some heavy winds, you know, and sometimes those yards have, you know, in the back or behind a garage, you get those weed trees growing, unfortunately, around the fence, and it pushes fences over. So we have fence panels falling. So normally that comes from the neighbor, right? And it's falling in either way. They're calling the city's coming to look. And again, you know, you don't have much time to rectify that. So when you have a company going out, that's usually what they're looking for, is things like that, because they can report it back. Where a tenant, you know, he's lived there for 10 years, he's just used to that fence leaning, right? Wouldn't necessarily think to tell us. But yeah, the city's looking for things like that. If neighbors are calling, obviously discarded items, couches, beds, you know, it's an eyesore anyway, but they're calling in things like that. Fences falling over, big branches that are hanging from big trees. Right after windstorms, you know, they kind of hang there and don't quite break off, right? That's a concern, safety. So, yeah, there's a lot of things people can call into the city about. That's best if you can, and including long grass. Like, you know, you have neighbors that take good care of their grass, and then you have that one on your street that's just
nobody wants that neighbor. Yeah,
nobody wants that neighbor, right?
No, for sure.
So, it's. Yeah.
So talk to me about a few minutes left here, Patrice, about the market in general. What are you seeing out there right now? Are we seeing some tenancies, you know, not being filled? Are we seeing what are you seeing?
We've had a couple of, you know, really good candidates that, you know, are coming in looking to sign leases, and then all of a sudden find out they just got laid off with that last round of layoffs, backing out of those leases. People are, I would say it's a hesitant market. Honestly, it's hesitant in the rentals where people are either, they're just like deciding to just stay where they are. It's not worth the move. They don't have first and last stays. They're not willing to move up to that 2-bedroom that they thought they wanted because they're just unsure and a little bit unstable. There's a lot of uncertainty. And a lot of investors are, you know, asking what the market's like because of the tariffs. What's that impact going to have on Windsor? Right. And we don't know, but there's a lot of uncertainty between the owners and even with tenants, a lot of inventory still, especially 2-bedrooms. We have a lot of inventory. Yeah. And it's, again, I think that the 1-bedrooms just aren't making those moves to a 2, which opens up the 1s because it's affordability is a thing and just the uncertainty of their jobs.
So are you seeing some relief on pricing?
We're trying to, we're working with different owners, like depending, right? Some are being very aggressive in price cuts just to get it rented. Some are sticking to their rents, hoping that, you know, the spring market's going to change things and bring up that demand again. But again, I mean, Windsor rents rose very, very quickly, right, over the last couple of years. So, you know, could we say it's an adjustment? Probably. right? Back to affordability. We still have very high unemployment, right? So our qualified applicants are a lower pool of people because of jobs and just, again, then affordability, right? If they're not working full time, then it's hard to afford some of the rents.
So you're definitely echoing, the broader real estate market that we've experienced as well. People are just uncertain. Right. They're kind of just staying put for the time being until they see what's happening, right? We're still seeing houses move. But again, for those who were, just wanting to move for the heck of moving, they're kind of holding still until they know what's happening from a broader standpoint. So you're seeing the same thing.
Yes, I would say, and it reflects the same: the uncertainty, the affordability, the questioning do I really need it? It's like getting a new car. You want a new car. Do you really need a new car?
Yeah.
And what's that payment look like? Which is smart. I mean, people, hopefully are going to places they can afford so they can maintain it, right? Because we equally don't want to move people in and have them set up to fail where they're not going to be able to pay their rent, because that's not good for anybody.
Not good for anyone,
right?
For sure. Yeah.
So, it's a little bit, and it's frustrating for owners, right? We have the spring market, May's coming, but then add to that the lack of student enrollment from the university. Yeah. We're still feeling the impact of that. So our May is way different than we've seen before because we don't have this huge influx of students coming. Hopefully in September we'll see more, but right now, it's not that. Yeah, it's slower, and it's just trying to adjust to it and then manage the owner's expectations as to what those rents might look like.
Well, it's like anything, right? As a landlord, you have to now work on, making your rental more attractive. So
exactly.
You have to you maybe get some new appliances in there, whatever you have to do to kind of, keep it going. So good. Well, good tips, Patrice. If anyone has questions, what's the best way to reach out to you?
They can call the office 519-252-5010 or send an email, info@goldmar.ca.
Fantastic. As always, Patrice, thanks for all your help, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks.
You're welcome. That's Patrice Surette from Goldmar Property Management. Lots to come right here on the Dan Gemus Real Estate Show.